Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Assalatu wassalamu ala mursalin. Allahumma salli ala sayyidina Muhammad Fatihil Maqlib wal Fatihil Nasabah Nasir Muhammad Haq wa Hadiyah Aswatul Mustaqim wa ala alihi wa qadril azim. Alhamdulillah. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh, everyone. Peace be upon you wherever you are, together with your family. We pray on this blessed night of Ramadan, on the 10th of Ramadan, that you are in good health, well-being, and in good state of Iman. I welcome to another night with Shaykh Aziz Fredericks on the 14 principles of the Deen. And inshallah, tonight we will still continue from last week chapter, which is love of status. And last week we learned so much, and I think there's so much more that we can learn tonight. And I think the subject that is very important to many of us because we are dealing with it in our daily life, right? So we're going to have a Q&A, question and answer after the task as usual. So I think I would like to remind you to message your question to 906-87106. And please, the question is relating to the task that the Shaykh is teaching, inshallah, and we try to convey it. So without further ado, we'd like to invite Shaykh Aziz to start the task now, inshallah. Tafadhal, Shaykh.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم وصلى اللهم على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه وسلم. Alhamdulillah, the last dars was a lot of material, a lot of content covered. So a lot of what I'd like to do today is to go over some of that material in a little more depth, and hopefully to lead to a couple of very practical discussions, or discussion of a couple of practical points related to the topic. First of all, we talked last week, just to recap on what we covered last week, we talked about the title of the chapter is Asl al-Sadis, the sixth principle of this section, about Ra'una, which he translated in the book that the version that we're reading here as frivolity. And I tried to explain that perhaps what to look at the Arabic word Ra'una would be appropriate to consider to translate something like being dazzled by this world, and being, as a result of this, being dazzled and unable to being duped, so to speak, by the world into behavior which is foolish and not focused and not directed. And that's how I would have looked at this word, but he's taken the word and translated as frivolity. So that was the first thing we talked about. And then we talked about what's meant by this dunya, this temporal world, this ephemeral world, this world that's that we're living in at this moment. And we said that there are two principles or two pillars, what we call the ruknaini, two principles or two pillars of this world, and they are wealth, al-mal, possessions, and jah, status. So of these two, one of them refers to things that you can attain, in physical material things that you can attain, and that's al-mal, and the other is al-jah, which is where you have possession over somebody's heart, or you have a place in their heart so that they raise you in status, and that's al-jah. We mentioned the hadith where the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, "Hubb al-ma wal-jah yanbitan an-nifaq fi al-qalb kama yanbit al-ma' al-baql." That these love of these two things, wealth and possessions, develop or grow hypocrisy in the heart, just as water grows or develops vegetation. So we have to be really careful of these two things, because the consequence of love of the world and love of the world in the form of wealth, possessions, and love of status, where people consider us high, then they will lead to these very dangerous things. These very dangerous consequences, which include hypocrisy, as mentioned in this hadith. I tried to talk a little bit about how we have to reconcile this with our basic needs, and also that I was trying to interpret a lot of what was being read in my own personal context, where I work a lot of my time with people who suffer from difficulties related to their own self-esteem, both in my professional capacity as a teacher of somebody, or a teacher of young people and children with emotional and learning difficulties, but also in the community with people who are facing all kinds of difficulties in their life, in their marriages, in their relationships, and many of those are suffering from issues which are related to their own internal self-esteem or lack of self-esteem, or where people have used their emotional state and their status to damage them. And in the case of learning, that it's debilitated them or made them unable to learn. And I'd like to just go back to that, because there are two things which are natural in the human being, which we cannot get rid of, and they are not necessarily in themselves. They are not actually bad things, but they are directly connected to the topic we're talking about, which is wealth and status. In terms of status, there are two elements which are, but in both of these actually, wealth and status, you need to have enough wealth, possessions, so to speak, to be able to live. If you don't have clothes to clothe yourself, or food to eat, then your life will be very difficult, and your spiritual development will be stunted. And that's why يكاد الفقر كفر, as it said, is that the word kufr and faqr, poverty and disbelief, are very closely in terms of sound, and actually in terms of what's meant is that they are actually close to each other, in that when you reach a level where you can't actually have your basic needs met, then you are likely to end up in spiritual turmoil, and ultimately perhaps even disbelieving or disregarding God Almighty, Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. That's one element. And then likewise in status, you have to have a minimum status to be able to live your life. And that's why the cases that I was talking about are on the extreme, where they haven't had their basic needs, their basic emotional needs met. Now, I have been reflecting on this quite a lot this week, and trying to relate this back to what Imam al-Ghazali had said. Now, Imam al-Ghazali had used this description where he talked about khawf, alam al-khawf, the pain of fear. Now, he said that you cannot avoid, a human being cannot avoid the desire for status. One of them is because the desire for status will remove the alam al-khawf, the pain of fear. Now, I've been contemplating this a little bit about what does the pain of fear mean, and what does Imam al-Ghazali intend by this. Now, the word fear is an emotion, and alam means pain, so it's the pain of an emotion. So he's really talking about, if you don't have the basic emotional needs met, then you cannot move forward with your life. And likewise, that the desire to get the basic emotional stability, the basic, what he calls, that to remove the alam al-khawf, that emotional pain of fear, is a basic necessity. And once you've gone beyond that, then you go into the realm of wanting to boost this emotional status higher than the basic need. But reaching that basic need is always going to be there. And then I realized that a lot of that wasn't inconsistent with my secular reading, so to speak, or my secular understanding of how I deal with people with emotional needs. And I reflected on a book which was called Ghosts from the Nursery. Now, this book describes how murderers later in their life, they could trace their criminal behavior, so to speak, so their lack of emotional satisfaction or not having their emotional needs met in the nursery, so to speak, it be pre-birth, at birth, and then immediately after birth, and certainly within the first few years of their life. And this book is fascinating. It goes from the nursery, but it's relevant to this topic of that you do need to have this basic basic emotional stability to be able to move forward. So that's something that one of the two necessities, so to speak, related to this is that you can never get rid of the need for status, because you always need to have a basic self-esteem. You always need to have a basic status. However, it's when it goes beyond that basic status and you start to puff yourself up, so to speak. Well, actually, I am really great. No, you need to know, have a basic need, but when you start to puff yourself beyond that is when it goes into this realm of what we're referring to here, which is ala. Ala literally means highness. So to take this haughtiness, this loftiness, and we described last week that one of the definitions of this ala is where you look down on people and you think that you're better than they are. And that's why the verse that's referred to, tilka darul akhirah, that is the next world, meaning that the next world will be coming. تَجْعَلُهَا لِلَّذِينَ لَا يُرِيدُونَ عُلُوًّا فِي الْأَرْضِ وَلَا فَسَادًا. That next world, the garden, the afterlife, will be for those who do not want this ulu, this ala in this world. They don't want to have this high status in this world, but rather, and they don't want to have fasad. They don't want to spoil the world. Now, I want you to contemplate those two things. Keep those in mind, during this dars. I also mentioned that to deal with this desire to control people's emotions towards you is an example of emotional abuse and spiritual abuse. And it relates directly to this concept of wanting to have status in people's hearts. So the abuser, what the abuser does is that he takes control, or tries to take control of the person's heart, that person's emotions towards them, and then he uses them to his or her advantage. And this is what we call emotional abuse. And it's all related to this concept of status. But in effect, what that person is, he's doing what's described in this verse as la yurid al-ulu fil ard, this desire to overpower, to be above, to take control of people, to take control of other people's hearts. And we mentioned that to interact with people and not to be abusive in that relationship requires purity in your intention in the way that you relate to them, and a methodology in your relationship which is valid. And I touched briefly on those, but I didn't go into a great deal of detail because the time was quite short. So they're the main kind of points that I wanted to focus on this week. Is why do we have this ulu? Why do we have this need to have status? And going back to what I'd said from Abu Talib and Makki a few weeks ago, is if you want to know how to deal with a bad quality, or you want to know how to deal with a good quality, how to inculcate a good quality into your life, or how to get rid of a bad quality, first of all, you need knowledge, ilm, and then after the ilm, after the knowledge of that, the reality of that quality, then you need to act upon that quality. You need to practice, for example, patience. You need to know about patience. You need to know the reality of patience, and then you need to act patiently until patience becomes your hal, your state. So knowledge is the first thing, and knowledge of this is what we're trying to develop here about what is this desire for status, and what does it mean about dealing with the status. So what is the action related to this? The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, going back to this idea of your intention starts when you leave your house, when you go out to work to your people, and of course it's also within the house, because a lot of people are abusive within the house. But when it talks about rising to race, going looking for status, let's give the example of you going to the mosque or you're going to the work, and these are two things which you should think: how what do you do when you go out? Well, certainly when I go to work, first thing I need to do is to put on the dress which is appropriate for my particular job that day. And in some cases that will be a suit and a tie. Sometimes it'll be tie and a jacket or tie and trousers. Sometimes it'll be no tie, or because if I'm working with certain types of children who are likely to be violent, then having a tie isn't the coolest of things to wear. So first thing is to think of your appearance, think of your state, and that is also part of your process of relating to people. So put yourself in that state, and then you leave the house. And how do you leave the house? And this is the point I want you to think about here. We'll come back to the close in a couple of minutes. Inshallah, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam had taught us a dua, and this dua is very, very important. And if we understood this dua, this supplication of how to leave the house, it would actually make our process during the day much easier. So the first thing the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam taught us was to say, Bismillahi amantu billahi tawakkaltu ala Allah wa la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. I leave in the name of Allah. I leave in God's name. So if you're leaving in God's name, Bismillah, then you're attributing whatever happens during this day to Him and not to yourself. Bismillah, amantu billah. I believe in Him. Wa tawakkaltu ala Allah. And I depend on Him. Wala hawla, there's no power. Wala quwwa, no ability, illa billah. And there's a hadith where the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that waiting outside your door, there are many, many tribulations. However, when you leave the door, and you say this dua, there will be two angels will descend and will accompany you for the remainder of your journey, for the day, and they will go basically say to everybody else, just leave him, because he's been protected. Because this is a hisn, this is a protection from all kinds of harm around you. So that's the first dua the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said. And then he went on to make a dua where he says, "Inni lam akhruj ashram wala batran wala riya'an." He says, indeed, I am not leaving this house ashran, boastfully, wala batran, and not haughtily, not arrogantly, wala riya'an, and not showing off to people, wala sum'atan, and I don't go out so that people can listen to my voice. Bal, rather, kharajtu, however, I've left this house, ittiqa sakhatik, hoping that I'm not going to attain your anger, O Allah. وَإِبْتِغَاءَ مَرْضَاتِكَ, and hoping for your pleasure. So if when you leave the house, you leave with this intention and with this style and this methodology, then the day that you go out, when you go to the office and you relate to people in the office, it's not going to be full of this haughtiness. Or as the dua says, when you go into the mosque, for example, you won't be going there thinking, yeah, Fajr time, I'm going to be the first one on the row, I'm going to be this and I'm this, and aren't I so super cool for being so religious? If you go out with this style, so to speak, the style of the Prophet sallallahu, the adab of the Prophet sallallahu, the manners of the Prophet sallallahu, you won't have that desire for status. And I'm going to come back to those words, ashran. In fact, I'll do it now, because ashran, I was trying to work out what the actual meaning of this is. And going back to the classical poetry, so to speak, it's when a woman sharpens her teeth. With the intention of making her teeth look, wallahu a'lam, youthful, and there's an idea of this sharpness, and there's this idea of and the Arabs say she sharpens her teeth to render them like a young person, and in Arabic tradition, a curse will fall on such a person, and that's what ashran means. So I don't go out boastfully. But what it means is, I mean, that's going back to the classic poetry. But if you can get the imagination going, that you go out, yes, all dolled up, ready to kill. I'm going out to kill, or I'm going out, yeah, I'm dressed to kill. When you go out with that ashran, that's what it means. Well, batran also means boastful, but I'm going to come to that in a minute. It literally means wild, wanton, reckless, proud, vain. They're all the words that you'll find in the dictionary to describe batran. But I'm going to come to a very specific when it comes to close in a minute, inshallah. Right. So that's one of the things that we need to know, is how to deal with things. Also, I'm just going to recap on knowing why have this feeling of wanting to have status. And I said one of them is that our natural desire, we have to have a basic emotional status. We need to have a certain level of self-esteem for us to function with human beings. We need to know we are loved by people to be able to relate to them. We also need to know that we're loved so that we can love ourselves and that we can also learn. I mean, the kids that I work with some of the times, it's just that they've never been loved. No one has ever taken any care for them. So why should they learn English? And when their teachers hate them, because their teachers have shown such contempt and have hurt them so often, how can you get them to learn? And it's this basic need that they have, which is why a lot of the work, the first work that needs to be done, and a lot of the cases, just purely therapeutic. My main teaching tool is Lego. One of my main because Lego therapy for me has been one of the most key ways to get children to engage, because by playing with them, you show that you pay attention to them, you care about them. And Lego and these kind of things are the kind of things that you need to have with kids. But likewise, on a bigger scale, you also need that with your family. Somebody was a good friend of mine. May Allah protect him and give him barakah and increase in his life, has taken every Wednesday off work. Alhamdulillah, he works in the NHS, and it's very, very intense time with coronavirus at the moment. And I sent him a message on Wednesday saying, so how's the fast going? I said, I'm just chilling with my wife. And we talked a little bit afterwards. And I says, actually, that's considered to be ibadah. Why? Because that emotional need that you have of just chilling is the only time that talking rubbish is permitted is with your wife or your husband. But there's no laghu in the hadith. There's no laghu. There's no, I just want to translate laghu. Yeah, basic vain talk, chit chat, nonsense talk. There's no nonsense talk when it's between a husband and wife. What that means is that the time that you spend just chatting about the latest Bollywood movie and Kareena Kapoor's uncle who just passed away, and this kind of nonsense talk is completely permitted when it's between a husband and wife. Why? Because everybody has an emotional, within them they have this emotional need. That's the first point. The second reason why it's intrinsic, this desire for status is intrinsic. We all need that much. But the second is, I'll read directly from the text, which, because I think he described it beautifully, and then I'll try and explain it a bit further in my own basic understanding. So Imam al-Ghazali says there is another secret in it as well, which is that the meaning of status is loftiness, haughtiness, and might, which we just said. These are among the divine attributes. So all the things, Ali is Allah's name. So we want to be Ali, we want to be high, but we have to realize that these are divine attributes. But divine attributes are naturally beloved to human beings. We always love God, and we love to be godly, so to speak, with a small g. And we love godly things. So anything which is related to God, naturally we will yearn towards within ourselves and outside. And when I say within ourselves, that's the key part here. In fact, they are the most beloved things to them. And that is because of a subtle secret between the soul, the inner being, and divine affairs. This is expressed in Allah's statement, say the soul is from my Lord's affair. It is a lordly matter that is naturally beloved on account of its independent authority and uniqueness. So what he's saying here, what Imam al-Ghazali is saying, is there an element within us known as the ruh, the spirit, which is attributed to the divine. The verse says, وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الرُّوحِ. They ask you about the ruh, they ask you about the spirit. قُلِ الرُّوحُ مِنْ أَمْرِ رَبِّي وَمَا أُوتِيكُم مِنَ الْعِلْمِ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا. That the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was told to answer, when they ask you about the spirit, don't give them a discourse, tell them, Ar-Ruh min Amri Rabbi. This is a divine matter. This is related to your Lord, to the Lord. وَمَا أُوتِيكُم مِنَ الْعِلْمِ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا. But it's so subtle that people don't really know, except where Allah has revealed what the essence of the spirit is. So So therefore, this ruh, and going back to what's meant, I'm getting confused which dars I was giving. Previously, I was talking in a couple of dars that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala breathed the spirit into Sayyidina Adam. So what this means is that the spirit of Adam, our forefather Adam, was breathed, the ruh was breathed into him, or the spirit was breathed into. So this breathing of the spirit is connected to the divine. So this spirit within us has an element of divinity, or is a connection to divinity. Sorry, not element of, it's connection to divinity. It's difficult to use our English terms without perhaps becoming a little bit dangerous here. But let me just perhaps quote Ghazali, where he says, and he's referring to the spiritual scholars, the Sufis. He says, and the Sufis say, "Ma min insanin illa fi batinihi ma saraha bihi Fir'aun fi qawlihi ta'ala fi qawlihi ana rabbukum al-a'la walakin laysa yajid lahu majana." He says that every human being has within him the propensity to what was made public and made pronounced by Pharaoh, by the Fir'aun, when the Fir'aun said, "Ana rabbukum, I am your Lord, al-a'la, the Most High." So we know that Fir'aun, the Pharaoh, was the most had the most ulu, had this most haughtiness, to the extent that he said he was God. So everybody has within them the potential to say they are God. And likewise, when perhaps I have to be careful here, not to fall into potential racism, but certainly I was talking with some people who speak Urdu, and they were referring to how the husband should be treated by the wife, and it sticks in my mind because it doesn't really relate to how the husband is treated by the wife, or maybe perhaps a different way, but we'll leave that for another time. Is that the husband is called Ghuda Majazi. Ghuda Majazi, Ghuda is the metaphoric God. And in other words, that the husband, the wife should treat the husband as a metaphoric God. And they quote this from a hadith, which says that the wife, if anyone was to make sajda to anybody, it would be the wife to the husband. And they use this to boost their status as Ghuda Majazi, that this divine, this metaphoric God. Now, this is exactly what's meant by the statement that Ghazali is quoting, is that everybody has this potential. But when we use this potential to abuse others, is where it becomes dangerous to ourselves and, of course, to other people. So this spirit within us is a divine spirit. And it's because of this that we're able to drive forward our lives. If we didn't have this spirituality, there would be no poetry. There would be no art. There would be no beauty. There would be no fine clothes. And I said I'd talk about clothes in a minute. There would be no fine clothes. There would be no discoveries. There would be no videos about orca whales. Yeah, this morning we were watching, what were we watching this morning, Idris? Wasn't orca whales. Humpback whales? I don't know, it's oarfish. You know about oarfish? Oarfish is the longest fish on the planet. Okay. Anyway, now why am I interested in this? It's because Idris is it's because of my spirit. My spirit has this element of divinity in it, or is connected to the divine, in that it wants to appreciate creation. It wants to, in some ways, master creation. Now, let me just go back to how people desire to be part of a bigger picture, be part of a bigger world, and how it relates directly to today. How many of you, when you get a friend request from Brazil, do you think, oh, I've got a friend request from Brazil? How many of us feel some kind of status as a friend request from this far off land? It's because we have this spiritual connection to want to see the world, but we can't see the world in completely, but our spirit would like to. And so how does this status affect us while we're sitting in this lockdown in Glasgow? Is that when we get a friend request from Brazil, we start to boost our status. Why? Because naturally we have this desire within us from what we call the ruh, the spirit, to want to see the world, to connect to the world, to conquer the world, which is why when when people traveled from Europe to find out about the great continent of Africa, and in their words, to discover Africa. They went to discover Africa, but what did they really want to do? Conquer Africa, destroy Africa, get control over Africa, to become the masters of Africa, to be the gods of Africa. That's really what they wanted. But the initial desire is what we all have. I want to see orca whales. I want to see the oarfish. I want to see that mountain in Malaysia, in Borneo. I haven't had a chance to climb it yet. The last time I was planning that was with my good brothers from Singapore. And inshallah, the intention is still there. Why? Because of my spirit. So it's natural for you to have this. And it's a good thing. But when that drive to go to Africa is there to appreciate the beauty of Africa, it's positive. But when it's there to master and conquer, it becomes negative. And that's what this divine element of your spirit is. Right, how does that relate to beautiful clothes? I used the word batran a few minutes ago as being haughty. There's a hadith where the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, "La yadkhulu al-jannah man kana fi qalbihi mithqala dharratin min kibrin." He says that nobody will enter into the garden with an atom's weight of pride. Nobody goes to the garden with even the smallest pride. If you have pride, khalas, you're not going to go to the garden. So that's really how dangerous pride is. And again, it's one of the consequences of this love of status, is that because you want status, you boost yourself up, you have kibr. And so somebody says, فَقَالَ رَجُلٌ, and a man said to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, إِنَّ الرَّجُلَ يُحِبَّ أَن يَكُونَ ثَوْبُهُ حَسَنًا وَنَعْلُهُ حَسَنًا. But everybody, basically he says, and there is a man, and he's talking about himself perhaps. He says, I like to have nice clothes, and I like to have nice shoes. And that's really, really powerful in today's modern age, because does not wanting status in the world mean that you have to dress like a tramp? Does it mean that you have to dress down? Does it mean that you have to wear torn clothes? Does it mean that you have to be poor? Is that what I'm saying? And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, "Inna Allahu jameel, yuhibbul jamal, yuhibbul jamal." He says Allah is beautiful, and He loves beauty. So his response about shoes was fine. Now, here, this goes back to explaining that your love for status is to connect it to your spirit. Now, when that spirit, when you dress in the morning to go out to work, there's no harm in making sure your tie is straight. In fact, if you don't wear a straight tie, you're going to look stupid when you go to the office. So you should spend a little bit of time. What it's saying is, the Prophet says, Inna Allah jameel, yuhibba jamal, al-kibr, but this pride that we're talking about is batar al-haq wa ghast al-nas, is what's meant by kibr in this hadith, that will prevent you from entering the garden. It's when batar al-haq, it's where you deny that these beautiful things are connected to the divine. And so when you dress haughtily and you put on, alhamdulillah, Sarah said, are you gonna get dressed now for the dars? And I says, yeah, I'll put this thobe on, this abaya. And she accepted this because the abaya is appropriate for the dars. I think she would have preferred me to wear a beautiful white thobe with a green shawl and a turban, because that's more appropriate. And I do wear a white shawl, a white thobe, beautifully ironed with a beautiful white, green, and a turban on certain occasions when it's appropriate, and where the status of what I'm teaching is, for example, my classes on Quran, I will always wear that particular dress. And I mentioned last week about the sometimes wearing a turban for certain gatherings. That's because it's appropriate. It's not pride necessarily. When you recognize that this is related to the Lord, that the Lord created beauty, and you should use his beauty and recognize his beauty and love his beauty and express his beauty beautifully in your relationship with people. And that includes the way that you dress and you appear. And there's nothing harmful about that. But when you dress in such a way that is batar al-haq, that you're denying this beauty, then you've moved from the status of recognizing a flower and writing a poem about it to saying, or recognizing the beauty of creation and attributing it, denying the creator. It then moves away from true spirituality, from true poetry, from true romance, from true love, to self-love, to a false love, deceptive poetry, deceptive kibr, because it's batar al-haq, which is why, going back to that hadith about how you leave the house, you leave if inni lam akhraj ashran, not sharpening my teeth, so to speak, wala batran, and not batran, denying the truth, or dressing in such a way that recognizing that this makes me big. So that's to do with about the approach, right? So that's something about what the root, so to speak, of pride as well, but ostentation of all of these qualities, but essentially love of status. The love of status is actually something within you which is natural, which is love of the spiritual and the love of the divine, and the need for emotional security, protection from alam al-khawf, from this emotional stability. So this is the first piece of the law. What is it? And then we talked a little bit about intention. Now we need to think about methodology. How do you gain status? How do you gain status in people's lives? How do you get that emotional feedback, so to speak, to boost who you are, to develop your self-esteem, or to develop your status within the relationship or relationships? Let's take the work example, because that's relevant to most of us. Doing my job. First of all, you need to apply for the job. You need to produce a CV. Then you need to go for the interview. So if you write a CV, oh, I'm useless, oh, I have no good, I don't dress nicely, oh, I pray all night, and that's not going to get you the job. You need to sell yourself, so to speak. So where does that become, moving from this needing to have a reasonable status to becoming haram? It's to do with the methodology. And there are three ways you can gain status, or three routes towards gaining status. One of them is haram, and two of them are permitted. So one of them is wrong, is forbidden, and two of them are permitted. So let's talk about the one that's not permitted. The first one that is not permitted is when it is related to lying. Now, if the status that you're seeking is based on falsehood, then anything which is related to falsehood is not acceptable within Islam. So if you write on your CV, I have had a job as a director of, I was the Prime Minister of England, and I have a PhD from 14 different universities, and I am the best person on the planet, and I'm this. And if you write all of that kind of rubbish, then it's haram, it's not permitted. When you try to gain somebody's heart, but the way that you gain their heart is through presenting something which is not true. I am this. For example, if you say to somebody, you know, I am able to do this job. You know, I have this degree, and you haven't got that degree, taking the job example, and you don't have that degree, then that's deception. You're trying to gain status in an illegal, haram way. Likewise, if you're trying to get somebody's heart by presenting something that is not true. So if you go to them, and maybe another example might be a marriage, because when somebody, presents themselves. I was told, and again, I might be accused of being leaning towards racism here, but I was told that if a Pakistani girl tells you that she's 32, then you just take off 4 years and that'll give you her true age. Astaghfirullah, so she told me the truth. She did. And the reason why I said that, it was a Pakistani that said it, by the way. And then what he was doing was basically just saying that it's all right in our culture just to, you don't need to tell the truth. And Sarah's saying, yeah, it's actually true. Lying about your age is not considered to be lying. However, it is wrong. Because if you're trying to gain somebody's heart, and this is what's meant in what Imam al-Ghazali, and apologies, I didn't really mean it as a racist. All cultures do that. But I just, Sarah's sitting there and I want to tease her. So apologies to everybody else that I've teased inappropriately along the way. Okay, so going back to that, so to gain somebody's heart, but through falsehood is wrong. So if you present yourself saying, I am from this caste, for example, going back to marriage, and I am this age, it is actually wrong. So it will build the relationship will be built on falsehood. So if you want to gain status in somebody's life, it has to be truthful. So when you gain status, it has to be through truth. That's one method, is by in effect selling yourself, but selling yourself truthfully. And if I remember I went for a job interview in America, which was in an Islamic school, and they just asked me, so how much Quran do you know? So I was expecting, I was being appointed as a school principal, and it was not part of the job description. It was nothing to do with my job description, how much Quran I know. So they asked me, so how many juz have you memorized? So I told them, and alhamdulillah, some people were pleased because they were looking for a school principal, and he didn't even need to be Muslim. The previous school principal wasn't Muslim. In fact, they'd never had a Muslim principal in that school ever, even though it was a Muslim school. So one of them asked me, and then they asked me in the job interview, could you read Surah Yasin for us, please? It was like, for 1 minute I'm talking about curriculum. Now, was I supposed to lie and say I don't know any Quran? No. And so if I answer the question correctly or validly and says this is the amount of Quran that I've memorized, then it would not be wrong to gain their hearts. And there was one particular person who I knew, he was the one that asked the question. I knew that as soon as I told him I knew this amount of Quran, I got the job. Not any of the other, because I could see in his eyes, he connected with me and I had gained his heart. I had won his heart, and he actually ended up being he was an engineer and a businessman, but so I gained his love, so to speak, by telling the truth. There's nothing wrong with that. It's only wrong if I say, oh, actually, I'm Hafiz of Quran and I know 25 riwayat and I can, I lead Taraweeh. And if I'd said all of that, it would have been wrong because I don't lead Taraweeh and I haven't memorized the whole Quran. Alhamdulillah, I've memorized a bit, and that's, just tell the truth. However, so this is the second. So the first is where you lie. The second is where you actually appropriate. And the example Imam al-Ghazali gives is the Prophet Joseph, Sayyidina Yusuf, when he came out of the prison. And alhamdulillah, most of us know the story of Joseph, either from the Bible or from the Quran. Sayyidina Yusuf or the Prophet Joseph, it's the same, is that he came out of the prison after interpreting the Aziz, the lead, the ruler's dream. And then the ruler asked him, would you take this, would you come and work for me? And he says, yeah, I can do this. And he told him, and he says, it's appropriate. But actually, Sayyidina Yusuf had previously gained people's hearts in the same way within the prison. But each time they were correct, because what he was doing, he was telling people, I am the one to do this. I am the one to do this. I am the one to do this. And I always give the example of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam when he says, "Ana Sayyid walad Adam wala fakhr." I am the master of all humankind, and I'm not boasting. It sounds like a boast in English. However, it's not a boast in any way. It's a statement of fact. He is the master of humankind. What it means by him being the master of humankind is that on the day when you're in most need, you go to the master who can solve the difficulties. And on the day of judgment, people will be going to Sayyidina Adam, the Prophet Adam, and they will say, Ya Adam, anta Abul Bashar, you are the father of humankind. Ishfi anda Rabbik, intercede with your Lord. And Adam will say, Nafsi, nafsi, myself, myself, go to another. And then they'll go to Abraham, and they'll go to Jesus, and they'll go to all the prophets, until eventually they come to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he will say, Ana la, I will intercede. Meaning, Ana Sayyid al-Bashar. He, on that day, you need to know, so you can look for the right person. And I give the example, if there's a car accident, and if, for example, I'm traveling with my good friends, a couple of whom are doctors, and somebody needs attention, and we go up to help them, the first thing those doctors would say was, I'm a doctor. They're not boasting. If somebody's lying there with blood all over them, and somebody comes up and wants to start touching them, it's not the best introduction to. So you go, I'm a doctor, and then you get on with the job, and that's not boasting. To say and I know this because I was it actually happened with me, where I was with somebody who never mentions he's a doctor. He doesn't ever talk about, and he dresses. Sometimes you just look at him and think, please, just you think that's scruffy. So, you know what I'm talking about. He's like my twin. And on one occasion he says, I'm a doctor. I think he is a doctor, actually. Yeah. Nobody remembers him as a doctor, but he said, I'm a doctor. And then he goes on. So here, where you look for status in people's hearts, because you actually deserve. And when I remember, the reason I'm in Glasgow is because I was actually on my way to London. I was moving from Glasgow to London, and somebody said, "Do us a favour, could you just come and help us out for a few weeks in North Lanarkshire?" So I went to this job, just on a temporary basis, helped out, and alhamdulillah, everybody seemed to like me and my team. That manager left. I stayed on because it was nice, and the manager left, and all of the team came to me and says, "Please, would you apply for the job of manager?" And the only reason I applied for a permanent job was because the people I was working with asked me to, in fact, begged me to. And then I ended up getting this job. And then from there, another management post. So but when I went for that job, I went into that job saying, actually, I am the best. And I remember going into the interview and just saying, well, I've done this, I've done that, I've done this, I've done this. I can do this, I can do that. Yes, this is nothing to me. And I went in to gain people's hearts, but there's nothing wrong with that because I was. So this is where you're. And the third is where you try to gain somebody's heart, but you hide your defects. And this is not haram either. And I'll give you the example of going back to marriage. Just as some people, they deliberately embellish the CV when it comes to marriage. And there's a few people that go the exact opposite. There's one guy, he says, I want to marry one of your students. I says, just go talk to her dad. He says, no, I need your blessing. I says, look, okay, you've got my blessing, don't worry about it. He says, no, but I need to tell you, I had a broken arm and I've got double jointed here and I've got a mole. No, I don't. He says, no, she might not like this mole. He insisted on taking his shirt off and showing. I says, please, just don't tell me any. And why, if he had done this, which he did, he could have gained my heart and he could have gained her heart by hiding this. So sometimes where you've done something wrong, and this is not haram, to gain status through hiding your faults is not haram. And this is quite important when it comes to your past mistakes, because you're not aiming to gain status by hiding your past. And I'll give an example. Where you do go into a marriage, when somebody goes into a marriage, people often ask me this. They say, should I tell my husband that I didn't always pray, or that I smoked, or I drank, or I took drugs, and perhaps I'd gone to too many discos and did this? do I need to put all of that on the table? And if you've made tawbah from those things, you don't ever need to make those public. You don't ever need to make those public. If you wish to make them public to your spouse, for example, or potential spouse, because you want to start a relationship with full, I'm not saying that's wrong, but you don't have to. You don't never have to. So you can hide your past. So that's the three ways of attaining status: by lying, which is haram, by being honest and putting out your qualities which are appropriate, and the third is by hiding. Right. So let me just quote from Ghazali. He says, seeking status through this means, meaning of lying, is unlawful, and so is seeking status through any offensive act. So anything that you do which is to get status, any offensive act, for example, like bullying, like putting the other person down, these are all wrong things. So through lying or through any kind of bad action, seeking status through an offensive act is analogous to acquiring unlawful wealth. It's like stealing from somebody. So if you go in and you steal their property illegally, it's haram. If you steal their heart illegally by using bad actions, for example, manipulating their need, manipulating their mind, manipulating their weakness, taking advantage of their love, lying to them, gaslighting them, as the term seems to be quite popular now. Any of these kind of things are all haram. Just as taking somebody's property by cheating is in indemnification or in operating, this is because the possession of hearts is a more serious matter than the possession of properties. In fact, it's more haram, if you want to use that kind of phrase. Okay, so that's something about how you gain. You can gain status, and as I said, knowledge is the beginning. Acting is the second thing, right? Related to status, the essence of status, or the essence of seeking status, is around two functions: love of praise and hate of condemnation. So you love to be praised and you hate criticism. And these are two things that we need to be able to deal with. And these are the points I'm just going to try and finish on, because this in effect completes the discussion. First of all, how do you deal with how dangerous are they? First of all, let me quote from Al-Ghazali. Ghazali says, you should know that most people have perished. They've perished. They've destroyed themselves because of their love of others people's praises and fear of their condemnation. And this is for those who have ulu, this arrogance, but likewise these people who are desperate for love. And I sometimes go back to some of the kids that I've worked with over the years, and I remember one particular girl who I had to refer to child protection because she was a danger to herself, because she so much wanted to be loved that she put herself in extremely vulnerable situations where she was and it's because she so desperately needed to be praised, and she hated herself so much, and she hated criticism so much. So people are destroyed through their haughtiness, but also through their exact opposite, because they have no self-esteem. That's why understanding praise and understanding criticism is so important. Love of others' praise and fear of other condemnation. Consequently, all their actions become responses to what pleases other people, so that they can win their praise or avoid their criticism. And this leads into all of those things, that all of the other illnesses of the heart. Showing off. You show off because you want people to praise you. You dress in a particular way because you want people to praise you. You do things because... So everything you do is geared towards people and not towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Understanding criticism and understanding praise is really important. And I'm going to try and summarize it quite quickly. And if people want me to go into more detail at a later day, I can. First of all, when it comes to praise, you have to remember that it doesn't last. This is worldly. Worldly. That whatever they're praising will not last. That if they say, oh, you've got beautiful eyes, they're not going to be beautiful eyes forever. Oh, you've got such a beautiful figure. It's not going to be a beautiful figure forever. Oh, you're so clever. It's not going to be, you're not going to, there's going to be times where you're going to lose. Oh, whatever they praise you for, it will be temporary. The quality will be temporary, plus their praise will be temporary. Because the people that praise you today, they'll be criticizing you tomorrow. So don't take praise to be something which is intrinsically valuable. So, and there's one line of Al-Mutanabbi, one of the early poets, which is kind of summarizes how you should deal with this. He says, "Ashaddu al-ghamma fi sururin tayaqqana annu sahibu intiqala." He says the greatest sorrow is a joy that I'm certain will go away. So that joy, wow, I just got 450,000 likes on my video. That's gonna go. Your status is gonna go. Today you've got hundreds of likes. Tomorrow it's gonna move on. So don't wallow. Don't bask in that. Likewise, you need to ask yourself, what are they praising? And if what they're praising is this temporary thing, it's your looks, it's your clothes, it's your worldly elements, then you know that it doesn't last. If what they're actually praising is a quality within you which is divine, for example, they love you because of your knowledge, or they love you because of your ibadah, your worship, or they love you because you help them, or they love you because you're a good man or good woman, then you need to think about that and attribute that to the one who gave it to you. And then the most important thing, and this is the last point I want to make about praise, is that you need to know that whatever it is, you cannot guarantee that you're going to have that at the end of your life. There is a possibility, going back to the memorization of the Quran, that amount of Quran that I knew 15 years ago, I don't know now. And if somebody asks me how much Quran do you know, I could say I knew that number of juz. I can't recite those Quran off my head. And I'm pretty certain that in 5 years, 10 years, if I live that long, more and more will disappear. I hardly remember my own name most of the time. It's going to disappear. I can't guarantee that even my worship, alhamdulillah, I'm able to pray, I'm able to fast. I don't know if that's going to be the case next year. I don't know at the end of my life whether Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to take this all away and leave me without that last good act. And likewise, the person who you look at with contempt, you don't know what their last act is going to be, because we know that there are people who live their whole lives, as the hadith says, doing amal shaitan, doing the devilish acts. When it comes to their last act, they do the amal ahl jannah. They finish with the act of the people of the garden, and Allah takes them and puts them in the garden. So you don't know what you're going to end up as. So if somebody praises you, mashallah, he's got such a beautiful qira'ah, he reads Quran so beautifully, or he's got such this, or he's, alhamdulillah, attribute it to Allah and recognize Allah can take it away. That's when it comes to praise. When it comes to criticism can be of three types. Or a person can criticize you. A person can either criticize you. He can either criticize you truthfully with good intention, or he can criticize you truthfully with bad intention, or he can criticize you untruthfully. So these are the three kinds of criticism you can face. Say that again. He can criticize you truthfully with good intention. He can criticize you truthfully with bad intention to hurt you, or he can criticize you untruthfully. So if somebody says to you, you're this and you're that and you're that, and you know it's not true, then how do you deal with that? You accept that it's not true. You don't put weight on their statements. And likewise, you should actually kind of feel sorry for that person, because the only reason they're doing that is because they're in a mess. And also, because they're in a mess, they've done something which is really bad. It's haram to do that kind of behavior. And what will the reward for you be in that patience is that they will, on the day of judgment, have to pay you back for the damage that they've done to you. And the only quality, the only trading on the day of judgment will be in rewards. So whatever good actions they've done will go from them to you. And if they haven't done any good actions, then the only thing would be bad rewards, so that they'll take some of yours. So you're not losing out when somebody criticizes you when it's not truthful. When they criticize you and it's truthful, it can either be with good intention or bad intention. And you need to be careful here. When they criticize you with good intention, you should recognize that they honestly love you. So when Sarah says, you're not going to go out with that tie on, the reason why she's saying that is not because she doesn't like me. It's because she doesn't want me to go out wearing that particular color tie, or whatever it is that she doesn't like about me. And that criticism, you should recognize, is from a place of love or a place of goodness. And sometimes it can be really harsh criticism. Like I said, I gave the example last week of Sayyidina Ali karamallahu wajh. When he came in, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, why are you wearing your mother's clothes? Why are you wearing your mother's clothes? That, in an Arabic, for an Arabic speaker to speak to another Arabic speaker, that's like the worst possible insult. But what the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is teaching us is that actually when you criticize with love, that criticism will be taken with love. Sayyidina Ali says, should I burn them, Ya Rasulullah? He says, yes, burn them. Whereas the same criticism for the same type of clothes that somebody else was wearing, he didn't even criticize the person. He told somebody else to mention to them that it would be better that they didn't wear that clothes. That clothes isn't. So here, when somebody criticizes you with good intention, it should increase your love for them, not increase anger towards them, but actually it should create. When they do it with bad intention, now this is the dangerous one. They're criticizing you with bad intention, then you should look, why are they trying to hurt me? And protect yourself from that hurt. Protect yourself from the dangers that are related to that relationship. And going back to the question that it took a couple of weeks back, which was kind of led into that discussion of spiritual abuse, where somebody said, so-and-so hurts my feelings. He's always criticizing me. But because he's really religious, I feel obliged to keep his company, because I can't be part of the gang, part of the group, unless I'm in his company, and he always treats me badly. And my answer was, get out of there. Because if somebody treats you badly, then there's not goodness in that relationship. You need to protect yourself. Now, when that person criticizes you truthfully, but with bad intention, what you do is you divorce or separate the intention from the criticism. So when you look at the criticism and say, well, actually, what he said is that I don't read Quran nicely, and that I make grammatical errors in the way that I pronounce my Quran. He said it in a really horrible way. He says, you're useless and you can't read Quran properly. But actually, he's probably right that my Quran recitation needs to improve. So I'll detach the criticism from the way that he criticized me. I'm going to go away and I'm going to work on that. But as for the way that he did it, I'm going to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect me from him specifically. And there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, there's a dua that I've become, alhamdulillah, a word that has become more, alhamdulillah, I've been able to read a bit more frequently now, whereas previously I only used to use it when I was in trouble. It's called Hizb al-Nasr of Imam al-Haddad. And every time I was in a real difficult situation, or somebody else came to me and they were like in a really bad place, and physically under attack and mentally under attack, and people are, then I would say, let's get together, really sort of husband Nasser. And then every time it happened, bang, the person that was on the warpath, they were destroyed. Sometimes physically they were just taken away and destroyed, and Allah looked after the person. So I only used to read Hezbollah Nasr for the big things, and alhamdulillah, now I realize that no, you don't do it just for killing people and destroying people, and taking people from their jobs, but actually for protecting yourselves from these little things where people behave in this way towards you. You actually need to protect yourself from people that have got harmful intentions towards you. So what, and it doesn't have to, I'm just using Hizb Nasr as an example, but there are lots of things from the Quran and Sunnah which are there to protect you. And the simplest of them is Qul a'udhu bi rabbil falaq and Qul a'udhu bi rabbin nas. These are two very short surahs. Read them every single day with the intention of protecting yourself from these kind of people. So that's one of the ways you deal with criticism. And it's slightly longer than I'd intended, but I felt there was a lot that needed to be covered today, and build on from last week, and hopefully I have done that. We ask Allah to benefit us by what we've learned, and to forgive me for all my mistakes, and I ask you also to forgive me if I've said anything appropriate or teased the wrong person, because I only meant Sarah. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. With that, I'll hand over to Khalid, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum, Shaykh.
Wa alaikum salam.
Alhamdulillah, mashallah. Thanks for the explicitly beautiful dars. I think we learned so much today, and I think because every single thing that you mentioned are relating to our daily life, whether at work, family, or even religious circle. And we thank you, for this, mashallah, beautiful, blessed dars. I have few questions, and I think some of it I need to rephrase. Quite similar, but not that similar, right? The first question, Shaykh, I received from this young lady, and she's been following your dars also, Singaporean. But lately, and actually she gave me the question this morning, and I think it's pertaining what you also have been saying last week and tonight, alhamdulillah. She was saying that she has a huge problem with her mother. And the problem is that the mother is a very volatile type of person, temperamental, I would say. So they have a maid, they have a domestic worker, helper, I would say. So the mother tends to be at times very mentally abusing the domestic helper, and especially in pandemic times, we are locked in homes and all that. So sometimes she said, I tried to speak to my mother not to be, doing this way, and yet she's very hard on me. And she said that I'm being righteous, or I'm being critical to the mother, and is very rude as a daughter. So she finds it stressful. So what's your advice on this sort of situation?
It's a very good question. I think the most important thing is there's two elements to what you need to balance up. First of all, the sister is doing the right thing by bringing it to the attention of the mother, because in the end, if the mother behaves in this way towards the domestic help, it will not be good for her in her afterlife. It is wrong, and it will be damaging to her. So if the daughter loves the mother, which obviously she does, she has to change this behavior or bring it to her that this is dangerous to her. Now that's really very important. It's also important because it's haram and it's wrong. It's just wrong to treat people badly. Now, the second principle is showing respect to your mother. Now, when you're teaching or guiding or helping or supporting elders, you always need to know that it requires a special methodology. And this is not just specific to this situation the sisters in, but it's general for all of us who are dealing with parents or elders in the community on how you deal with them. First of all, you have to respect their age and where they have status in the community and also where they all have blood ties. You have to respect all of these things. And if you don't respect those, then the way that you speak to them or the way that you behave with them will be affected. You could come over as being rude. And I'll give you the example of Sayyidina Hassan and Sayyidina Hussein, two grandchildren of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They noticed that an old man was making wudu, ablution, incorrectly. So they went almost like telepathically. They realized what they needed to do. They went to him and says, "Could you tell us which of us is making wudu correctly?" And the two young boys made the ablution, made the wudu in front of him. And then as he was looking at them, he realized that that's actually how you do it, and he was doing it wrong. So they didn't go to him and say, "Hey, old man, don't you know how to make wudu?" They taught him and they guided him in the best possible way. Now, it's really, really important with your parents in particular that you never go up to them and come up to them and say you're wrong, except when I say never, except in extreme situations. For example, if the father or the mother is hitting a child, or the father is hitting the mother, then for the child to intervene and say this is wrong, sometimes it requires drastic action. But generally speaking, under most circumstances, it always requires gentleness. It always requires respect and love, and it requires a tone. And the best, going back to the example of Sayyidina Hassan and Sayyidina Hussein, it also shows example is better than talking. So if you show the right way to behave. In this case, the specific case is actually quite difficult, because when she starts to treat the domestic helper well, then the mother is going to say, "Well, you don't respect this mess, you don't respect the job," and that. So she needs to be careful and how she works out modeling, so to speak, the right kind of behavior. But certainly, work out a plan, a methodology. How should I speak to my mom? Don't do it all the time. Do it once in a while, and then perhaps remind people. For example, a reminder might be, what would happen if we lost all our money and I had to go out and work as a domestic helper? How would you want people to treat me? How would you feel if somebody spoke to me like the way you spoke to that? Just subtle ways, and not make sure it's not constant. And that's may Allah give her tawfiq, Allah guide that sister and open a door for a way to get the right answer.
Thank you, Shaykh. That's a very interesting way of how you teach us to deal with elderlies. Shaykh, and the next question is almost similar, but I'm trying to rephrase and try to break it away. Is regarding about teachers, right? Guide. So there's one question asking about, I'm a teacher, a religious teacher, and I deal with many young people, and they trust me. And like what you mentioned, that we have to be very careful when people start to trust you and how you deal with them. But sometimes I felt, the question is, sometimes I felt frustrated with the way that they are not listening to my advice so that they can benefit for what I had taught them, like the tarbiyah and so on. So am I wrong if I were to say, listen, like, be firm with them and saying that you have to do this and you have to do that, or I have to leave it to them, and if they fall, then I come back to them again. So what's the advice here?
It's a good question about teaching methodology. One of the important things is that learners learn within boundaries, and where there's no boundaries, learning is actually very difficult to take place. Going back to the extreme examples that I was giving of children, like I walked into to see this boy, and the first thing he does, he punches me in the face because I've got to set boundaries with a young boy like this. He can't punch me in the face. But likewise, even Idris, we're now homeschooling. Obviously, we're locked in the house. He knows we have a timetable every morning. We sit on what we call the zawiya. So he comes to the zawiya, the corner of the house, And even we know that the zawiya is a prayer mat, so sometimes we can actually move the zawiya. So, but he knows he has this zawiya. He sits there, we start with the Fatiha, we look at the timetable, we sing the days of the week song, you know, there's Monday and there's Tuesday, there's Wednesday, and and then we go through, and then what date is it today, Idris? And we go through this routine, so he knows the parameters. And then we go into the first lesson and the second lesson. So he knows the boundaries of, so you need to set boundaries. And so you can't just let children go wild. You need to have boundaries. And then within those boundaries, you can allow them the freedom. But if giving them complete freedom will never work. So is it that you can never say, listen? Yeah, of course you can. If that means that you're setting the boundaries, because you need at times to say, you shouldn't do that. Because if you never get to that point where you say you shouldn't do it, you never get the boundaries. But you must always do it in a way which is clear and is purposeful. So I don't shout very much. In fact, I was in that particular school for 3 months. And the first day that I shouted was about 2 months into, and these kids were, some of them, they were completely freaked out. And one of them, you know, he wanted to phone his mum to say, Mr. Ahmed shouted at us. Mr. Ahmed, it was like the end of the world. Because they'd never imagined me shouting. Now I shouted partly because they needed to know there's actually a point at which, and they hadn't reached that point. Because when they hit me in the face, they didn't need to be shouted at, because there was a reason why they hit me in the face, and I needed to understand that. But when they were being noisy and being disrespectful to another teacher, they needed to have control. I needed to get them under. So I shouted, and there was dead silence because they were shocked, because it was me first of all, and also because they're so used to a soft voice. That me raising my voice once was enough to never have to shout again. And also, that one shout, in terms of the 3 months, it didn't really damage my throat a great deal, whereas most of the other teachers would go home with a sore throat every single day because they're always shouting. So when you raise your voice, when you listen, then you do it purposefully. And also you need to know that there must never be anger in there, because once you start to get angry with the child, you know that your intention is not correct, because what's being motivated is something within you. And that's one of the things that is very, very important. And when, I'm sorry for keep reflecting on these cases now, but it's relevant because these are some of the most extreme cases of teaching that I've ever dealt with. And there was times where physically we'd have to hold kids. And that's part of what we do. It's part of having to set these boundaries, was that you're not allowed to hit people. The only way you can stop. So when I come into a situation, I can remember going into a situation, I go and I says, I think you should have a cup of tea now. So this teacher is now holding a child. I said, I don't want to take a cup of tea. I says, you will take a cup of tea. And then eventually I realized I'm coming to take over, because I could read that he's angry with the child. So there's so he was doing what I was doing, but because he was motivated by anger, he needed to get out of that situation. And then he'd go away and he'd come back and he says, I had my tea now. Of course, he didn't have his tea, he just went out of the room, sorted himself out, and then came back again. And then there's other times where I need sometimes for people to realize, do you need a break, Mr. Ahmed? Because that emotional state I'm in is not good for the child. So when you shout at a child or tell a child off or say, listen, or when you're getting frustrated with a child because they're not learning, you need to pull yourself away from that. And that's usually when I said, look, let's take 5 minutes, let's get the Lego out. Yeah. And often with Idris, I'll say, should we have a break now? I say, yeah. But sometimes because he needs a break, but sometimes because I need a break. Sometimes I'm getting frustrated with not being able to get through to him. And as a result of not being able to get through, give him 5 minutes doing something different and come back to it, because I'm at fault for not being able to teach him, not being able to get through to him. So that's a summary of teaching methodology in 3 minutes. Sorry.
I think that there's a lot more we can learn, but alhamdulillah, it's really amazing shit to hear your experience and how to deal with it. I think lots of teachers, inshallah, will benefit. The next question also regarding guide, mentioning about tariqah and last week about spiritual views. We have so many questions on that particular issues, and today I also received it. So again, on a quite similar situation, but this is about adults. You know, when you join in tariqah, you have like representative and all that, and sometimes your representative is that, you know, like you're not doing well enough to be part of it. Like maybe you don't do much zikir, or you don't know what the spiritual path is, or you don't really click with the group and so on. So how far can one go with it? Like let's say you like someone and he joins you in the path, but he seems to be off tangent. You get what I mean? Like not following the sequence that you wanted it to be. Is it right for you to say like, hey, you know, you are wrong and this is the way and follow us, you know, that kind of thing? You get what I'm trying to say? I tend to rephrase.
No, there's lots and lots of things, lots and lots of points you're making in there. And if we had more time, maybe we could dedicate specifically to this. First of all, when somebody enters into a tariqah, they shouldn't go looking for sheikhs, and they shouldn't go looking for tariqahs, or they shouldn't commit to a tariqah until they know that this is the path that is going to be good for them, their development. Because there are many paths out there, and if you make sure that before you commit to a path that you're ready for that style, because each path has its own way, and each one has its own flavor. So when that flavor isn't to your taste, then you're not gonna continue to continue in that. So it's better to spend a bit of time. And I remember there was this some time ago in the UK, everybody, it was just fashionable. Everyone has to have a sheikh. And people were saying, if you don't have a sheikh for 3 days, then you're going to the hellfire. So what? 3 days I've got to find a sheikh. Yeah.
Stop what?
Let's get on the internet. And so many people came to me saying, I've taken the oath of allegiance with the sheikh, and then after 2 weeks I realized I don't like them, or the path isn't the one that I like, and I like Sheikh so-and-so. If they just took a bit of time before they commit, that's the first thing. Then once they have committed, that's the second kind of question that you've got, is how do you commit to the patterns? Do you commit to the methodology? In some, it's very, very important. The methodology is really important. And if you really want to get the blessing of a path, then doing things exactly as the teachers have taught you is really important. I'll give you the example of Sayyidina Abdul ibn Umar radiallahu anhu. Now he's a close companion of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he teaches us how to do the Hajj. So he was a young man, but for some reason Allah blessed him as this young man with deep and vast knowledge of the Hajj. And almost all of the books of Hajj now trace their knowledge to this particular companion, Abdullah ibn Umar. Even the companions in the time of the Prophet ﷺ and after would refer all questions of Hajj to him. Now, when he did the Hajj, if you read how he did the Hajj, he went to a place called Bir Ali, Hudayfa, and then he went and he drove his camel in a circle like this. And people asked him, yeah, is this part of the Sunnah? Is this what to do, like go around in a circle? He says, no. He says, so why do you do it? He says, there used to be a tree here. Just outside of Hudayfa, which is where the Masjid al-Miqat is, there was a tree. And when he used to go around the tree. And he said, when I came for Umrah, for Hajj, with the Prophet ﷺ, his camel went around this tree. So I just follow the tree. I just go around a tree that used to be there. There's another occasion where he lowered his head as he was walking. And somebody asked, why are you lowering your head? He says, because there used to be a tree. And the Prophet ﷺ lowered his head when he walked past the tree, under the tree. So he's walking along there and he just lowered his head. Now, people used to think I was crazy when I lived in Jeddah, because I used to go. I say, when it comes to such as, I will eat. You want something to eat? You have to drive me to such and such a place, because this is where we eat chicken and chips. First of all, you don't like chicken and chips, so why are you making me drive for 10 miles to this chicken and chip shop? It's because so and so ate chicken and chips in this place. And then I go to ice cream, and it's at another place. And then in Ramadan, we queue for an hour to have food, beans.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, food. So
Yeah.
there's one particular place where Habib Ahmed Mashur used to like his food from, and it's the best food. So all of these things, the imitation of the exact methodology will bring around a massive blessing. Why do I do all of this? It's because I don't love the chicken and chips. I love my beloved teacher who ate chicken and chips from that particular shop. He didn't go, he said to me, he says, that's the shop to get the chicken and chips. That's where I go. So when you're into the path, even in the most mundane things, like lowering your head under a tree, the adherence to the path, you'll see that's where the blessing of the path is. So if somebody wants that, they should follow as closely as they can. Right, what if they don't? What if you do and you want everybody? How do you communicate your love for the path to everybody else? You can't. I can't convince you that those chicken and chips taste better than any others, because they probably don't. Actually, the fool does. I can tell you that. But the chicken and chips doesn't. The ice cream probably does. So, but you can't convince somebody that they should lower their head or do this or do that. You can't convince them of love. Love is not something that is something that they have to grow into, and so that they need to see your love. But if you treat them like a dog, how are you going to say this is how you love? Bang! No, that's how you. This is how you follow the tariqah. Bang! This is the path of love. Bang! And whether it's physical like that or spiritual or worldly, that's not how you deal with your brothers or sisters in the tariqah. And when people do that, the tariqah is not a path of love. It's not. There's no love in that. You know, that's going to destroy you. It's going to destroy the path. It's going to destroy the way. So bring back the love, and inshallah, you'll see it's fine. And the emphasis should be on love. And if it's there, it shall be. I'll just finish with one example of Habib Ahmed Mashur. I think I gave this example before when he criticized some people. The way that sometimes, you know, he was very, he was not, he harsh. He was never harsh. But this was probably the harshest I've ever heard him. Was that somebody was belching through the whole lesson, like, through the whole lesson, and it was really annoying. But I came to hear Habib to the class. I didn't come, you know, I'm not going to be distracted by somebody belching. So I just put my head down and just focused. And alhamdulillah, you know, I just kind of blotted, and it didn't bother me. But it bothered other people, and they kind of looking at him, and Habib just looked up, and he just looked, and he just said, this boy is from the family of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I love him, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam loves him, and he will always be welcome in my gatherings. And it was like to say to the others, don't you ever think that he shouldn't be here, because the people were looking at him saying, do you not have any manners? Do you come to the class and you belch all the way through? Shouldn't you go out and belch outside? I mean, if I had indigestion, I wouldn't sit in the class. I would go out, because I would die rather than belch in the class. But Habib just said to that, said, I would rather, he's always welcome in my class. He brings, and he like, so the way that he criticized with such love, and that's why I could stay in those kind of gatherings, because all it was built around was love. And when you take that love out, you know, you're not going to help anybody. You know, And I'm sure the adab that people are talking about are not as bad as belching in front of the Shaykh, is it? You know, if belching in front of the Shaykh can be dealt with love, then, you know,
Yeah,
whatever
it's true.
su'al adab, whatever bad manners that people have in the tariqah there in Singapore, no, it's not, don't worry about it. Just deal with it with love, kindness, inshallah.
Inshallah, Shaykh. Thank you very much, Shaykh, for the beautiful story and the wisdom that you share with us. The next question is about material. I'm reading the question right now. Most time for my career in financial management, I need to be dressed up in high status brands, although I do not personally find them enticing initially. I need them for the purpose of my work. Like you mentioned just now, you have to wear properly tie and all that. And ultimately, this made me love grow into a superficiality of material. And I'm aware of this, and I'm trying to stop, but I can't. I find it that if I do not have these branded items, it affects my work. It is affecting me mentally, and it is affecting my relationship with my own family and friends. What can I do?
I think the person needs to get a balance. Going back to that hadith, in fact, I think I'll just quote the hadith again directly, where the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, no, this, you won't go to the garden, you won't get to the heaven if you have this atom's weight of kibr, of pride. So you could translate that into modern terms as I like to wear brands, good brand. Now, why? The question should be why? Why do you want to wear a good brand? And if you look deep inside, and this is something that only that person can start to dig deep into. I like to wear good quality clothes for work for two reasons. One, the impression that I give is really important on how my words are accepted. So if I go into a situation and people will not accept what I'm saying because of my clothes, then the clothes become a condition for me delivering my words. So as a professional, my job wasn't always just to deal with one particular school. I have many schools, but usually it's when a school is in crisis that I need to deal with them, or when I'm doing an inspection. Now, if I'm going into a school that's in crisis and they don't look up to me as being the savior, then I can't do my job. I've got to go in there and I've got to immediately create the impression that I'm here to solve your problem, because usually it's a matter of confidence. So if I come in and say, we can do this, we can solve this problem, that is the beginning of solving the problem. But if I look like I'm a fool, they won't believe. And it's really, really important that they take my word seriously. And if I say to a teacher that this is the way you do it, and they look at me and says, how do you know? Or who are you? Then they'll, which is why I teach, so that people know, actually, I'm quite happy just to take my jacket off, get in there and teach kids. And when it comes to kids that are throwing chairs at people, I'm quite happy just going in there and I talk to them and work with kids. And, you know, if kids are on the roof, that's my thing. You know, that's what I'm good at. So other people, they know that if a kid's on the roof, they can call Abdul, but they're not going to do that if I don't dress in a particular way. And likewise, if I wear the same shirt every time I go to that school, it will also have an impact, because they won't have that freshness, so to speak, of awe. And that's really important when I walk into a school. So people will say, well, how come you seem to wear the same clothes every single week when you're teaching a dars? Because I don't have that many clothes. But when it comes to work, all of a sudden he's got a new shirt every other day. Every day, Sarah just saying. You know, but it's important because I need I need that, because I cannot communicate what I need to do. And that's what I'm paid to do. I'm paid to solve people's problems. And if the reason I can't solve the problem is because I can't afford a proper shirt, then get a decent shirt. The other thing is, if you're going to wear a shirt and it's part of, get a good one. If you're going to wear a shirt over and over again, don't get it from Primark. You know, Primark in Singapore, for two reasons. One, they use slave labor. And the second is they're only made to wear once. They don't wear. So why am I going back to why am I wearing these clothes? And if you can work out, and if it's because actually I like people to think I'm better than them, then this is what it goes, where it says, Inna Allah Jameel yuhibbul Jamal. Allah is beautiful, He loves beauty. Al-Kibr, Batar al-Haq, is where you deny the truth, where you deny that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed you. You haven't got that good job because you're clever, it's because Allah gave it to you. You haven't got the money to buy good clothes because of your job, it's because Allah gave it to you. And Allah can take it away. That's why once you get to that point where you start to attribute it yourself, you're wasted. And when you start another part of ghast an-nas is where you look down, have contempt for other people. If, going back to my situation, I go into that job and I have contempt for the head teachers that are calling me because they've got a problem. Stupid idiot. Can't you solve this problem? That's kibr. But wearing a decent suit, coming in and saying, I'm here to help you. That decent suit is part of the process. And Allah loves the beautiful one. So I'm doing it because I want His pleasure. But if I'm going to, see this suit? I wear an Armani suit because I'm paid 10 times as much as you. That's why you're a head teacher and I'm an improvement officer. I'm in here to improve you. That's my job. Idiot. If I go in like that, that's kibr. But kibr is not wearing an Armani suit. Armani suit's no problem. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you go to your mum's house, when she invites you for iftar, which you can't do, I don't know, can you do iftar together in Singapore? It's not allowed. But, you know, hopefully by Eid day, you know, if you go around there, you know, you dress up with an Armani suit just to show your mum, you know, you're rich. Khalas, this is what I do. So go, why? Every single thing. Why? What's my intention? What am I thinking? Why am I doing this? And if the reason is within this hadith, because Allah is beautiful, He loves beauty, khalas, fine. But if it's because, yeah, I'm cool, you're in danger. Get that out of your heart. Try and remove it from your heart. The meaning of La ilaha illallah is La ilaha means there should be nothing in there. There should be no God, no Amani in there. Illallah. Huh?
Yeah.
The only thing that should be in my heart, Allah. Amani suit is no problem. But when the Amani suit is in your heart and not on your clothes, then you're in trouble. So that's what you read. And that's why saying La ilaha illallah should have an effect on your heart. And that's why you sometimes see the people from the Chisti Tariq in particular, they La ilaha illallah. Because they focus on their heart, that La is pulling the Amani suit out of the heart. La ilaha over my shoulder. Gone. Illallah. Only Allah should be in there. And that's, I'm not saying you should do it like that, but you should do the La ilaha illallah with the meaning of getting rid of everything that's in your heart. Getting rid of, you know, your pride, getting rid of your love of the dunya, getting rid of everything from your heart. Empty it. We ask Allah to empty our hearts.
Ameen. Thank you, Shaykh. Beautiful way of describing the whole reality of wearing things for the sake of Allah. Yeah. And Shaykh, I think we left with two questions due to time constraint. There's so many, but I think we left with two. This question I think is particularly very important because it's like what you said just now about there's a saying about arrogance from a husband, in saying that if there is some, you know, guys like to say this, like you mentioned just now, if someone that you can sujood is your husband. So this sister, she said that her husband always like taunting to her, saying that, you know, I'm the head of the family, I'm the leader of the family, and she said that, you know, I still have the rights to marry more than one, and she always keeps saying I can marry more than one, and she take it like a mental abuse, and it doesn't seem to be like a joke or no, it's not. And he keep on saying, oh, I met this girl, I'm thinking of this and all that. So she's asking you for advice like, how do I do this? Because it creates anxiety through his arrogance. Yeah.
This is abuse. This is not like abuse. This is abuse. Um, and she needs to think about herself here more than him, because he's got his own issues and his own problems. But what she needs to do is protect herself emotionally, and perhaps even if it gets to a point where physically, but she needs to protect herself emotionally and from the abuse. Now, how do you protect yourself emotionally? How do you develop yourself emotionally is a big topic. And perhaps if you want to maybe one day dedicate some time just to developing emotional competence, emotional strength.
Yeah.
But to try and be brief is, we mentioned Abu Zayd al-Balkhi once when I was there over there.
Yeah.
Now he talked about something which is, it can be best understood as building up positivity within you. That you need to exercise positivity within yourself, to try and build strong thoughts within yourself so that you aren't allowed to be bullied. Because this is bullying, the emotional bullying in particular. So what you need to do is to strengthen your inner emotions, not to respond, but to work out how can I become stronger within myself. And there are lots of different methods, different ways of doing this. Some of them is just through worship, through Quran, but when you go in there, you read with the intention, oh Allah, give me strength from this Quran. This thing that I'm doing here, give me strength. And having positive thoughts. Just sit for a minute and just think of all of the gifts that Allah has given you, for example. All of the blessings that Allah has given you. And then that will be another way of developing your strength. Another way, our teacher, Shaykh Habib Hassan, he taught me something very important, which is from his father, is that he used to read the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Ya Qawi, oh strong one. He used to do this every single day, 116 times. But I'm not prescribing this particularly. You go to great people like Habib Hassan if you want. But to just connect to Allah's name, Ya Qawi, Ya Qawi, Ya Qawi, oh strong one, give me strength. So turn to him and ask for strength. So give yourself time on your own. Find time on your own where you just is you. And then slowly what will happen is you'll become stronger and stronger, be able to resist his bullying. And not to allow the focus to be on him, and not to allow the focus to be on his bullying. If he wants to take another wife, he will soon learn that having two wives is more difficult to bully two wives than it is to bully one wife. And that he's lucky to have his first wife. And if he wants to take a second wife, she ain't going to stop him. Let him go. And not focus on that. Don't focus on that threat. Just, okay, so what if he does? He's in a mess. She's got to work on herself, got to strengthen herself. And in the end, he's an idiot. And she should recognize that. He's not a god that she has to worship. Can I just explain this hadith? Because I think it's really important on it. This hadith about the if anybody were to make sajda, it would be the sajda of the wife to the husband. First of all, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam would never have said, if Allah was allowed, if alcohol would be permitted, it would be champagne. It's not possible. It's inconceivable that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam would say that if something haram was allowed, it would be this haram. So here, the sajda that's referred to cannot be the sajda of ibadah. because it's just not possible that the Prophet ﷺ is talking about worship, because he wouldn't say if alcohol was permitted, it would be brandy. He wouldn't say that. It's not possible that the Prophet ﷺ could be talking about worship. So it's not to do with worship. So this thing about God, metaphoric God, is complete nonsense. It's nonsense. What's being referred to must be something not worship. So what other sajda could it be? What sajda could not be worship? Now, if we look at the history of sajda, of prostration, you'll see that prostration was permitted to the nations before, to the extent it's even described in the Quran that the angels made sajda to Adam.
Yeah.
They didn't worship Adam, they made sajda. What sajda did they make? They made what is called sajda to taslim, the sajda of respect, and the sajda, the prostration of greeting. Taslim actually means greeting. So they greeted him with sajda, with prostration. Now, what does this mean in our modern context? Now, if I am a good husband, how will I measure based on this hadith? Is it because my wife does sajda to me? No, because that's not what the hadith is about. It's about sajda to taslim. How does my wife feel when I walk through the door after a hard day's work? Does she greet me with such intensity that it would be like the sajda of taslim? If I have earned that relationship, if I've invested in that relationship, if I've shown that amount of love, that when I walk through the door, she almost wants to make sajda out of happiness that I've walked through the door. Yes, I know I'm a good husband. Okay. Now, the husband, if he understood this hadith, he would strive to get to that position where his wife loves him so much that when he walks through the door, she almost wants to make sajda to him. And when you drive home, and I know this, alhamdulillah, when I drive home, Sarah, she joked the other day, maybe I shouldn't say this. She says that one day I walked through the door and I did a dance as I walked through the door, saying, "It's all done, it's all done." It became a running joke with the two of them, meaning that the day's over, work is finished. But if when I'm driving home from work, I'm thinking, it's all done, alhamdulillah, I'm going to my wife and son. If that's how I'm feeling, then that probably means that when I walk through the door, they're going to be feeling the same. So the hadith is about building that relationship between the husband and wife, that you have that feeling. It's not about worship in any way at all. It's just not conceivable that this hadith is to do with deification of a human being. It's just not linguistically, logically, religiously, it's just impossible. And the people that have misunderstood this hadith have done so drastically wrong that it's dangerous. And this person, his arrogance towards his wife is based on this misunderstanding, on this kind of now, if he spent a little bit of time trying to earn her love, she probably would love him and probably would make sajda to, not sajda to worship, but emotionally would make that feeling towards him. And may Allah protect her from him and make him soften towards her and get a full understanding and get a grip on life and stop kidding himself. And that's when we started with the word ra'una, of deception and frivolity. That is the best description of frivolity. Is the best description of ra'una. Ra'una is what he has. May Allah protect him.
Thank you, Shaykh. Oh, mashallah. Wow. Thank you very much for the explanation. I think all of us need to know it now that you have dealt with it. I think we can share this to many people, inshallah. Allah preserve. This is the last question, Shaykh. Unfortunately, to many of them out there. Sorry for the time constraint, and he also need to prepare himself for iftar and so on. Shaykh, do you have any advice on how we can be a leader that is not arrogant due to our rank? Sometimes when I have to lead a situation when others are older and more experienced and skilled than me, I felt that I have to be a bit bruising their ego, so as to say. How do sometimes I felt guilty, and because maybe I'm soft, that kind of thing. How do we lead with prophetic character without love or status or pride?
You very, very, very rarely need to bruise somebody's ego. Very rarely. A leader doesn't need to hurt people's feelings. Occasionally they do. Sometimes you just need to put somebody in their place. But it's the exception, not the rule. Where people make this the rule, then you're going to find bullying in the workplace. You lead by example. You lead by being good. And you don't go into a position of leadership unless you deserve it. If you're not right for that position, like I said, for all of those people that asked me to be their leader, it was easy for me to lead them because they want me to be there, and I'm qualified to take the leading role. And if I say do this, there's one person in particular, he will say, no, I think you should do it this way. And I say, explain why. And he'll tell me his point, and I say, well, I think you're wrong. This is why I think you should do it my way. And almost always he would agree to the way I do things. But this discussion was important. And in the end, on the very few occasions, he worked for me for maybe nearly 20 years. And I can only remember telling him to do something maximum twice in 20 years. Every time we talked and he accepted it. So maybe once or twice I needed to, and I didn't even bruise his ego. I just said, look, I'm the boss. But I think twice in 20 years, I spoke to him and says, I'm the boss, just do it. So going in that with having, so just to rephrase, don't go around bruising egos. That dua that I mentioned at the beginning about إني لم أخرج شطرا ولا أشرا ولا بطرا ولا رياء ولا سمعة بل خرجت اتقاء سخط الله سخطك وابتغاء مرضاتك. This dua you should make sure if you're in a position of leadership in particular, you always say it when you leave the house. When you come back, you always say istighfar, astaghfirullah, 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 and you say a lot of la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah al-aliyyil azim. There is no power, there is no ability except from Allah. And as long as you keep doing these things on a regular basis, inshallah, you'll soon see that your leadership style will get easier and easier, inshallah.
Yeah, I think all of us want you to be our leader. Okay, I have one more question. I hope you don't mind. This last question I felt that is very important that I just discovered. It's about, just now you were mentioning that if someone were to marry, you don't have to tell everything to your future spouse or whatever. But there's this sister, she said that I was being sexually abused before when I was a kid and when I was a teenager. So should I say to my future spouse that I was sexually abused before by my father, or I should just keep it quiet?
This is a really important question, and it's actually, sadly, a very common question. And I'll give you a general answer.
Okay.
Then I'll say that this particular situation will require a specific answer. And if they want to contact me directly, I'm happy to do that. Or if they want to talk with somebody more locally, I'm also happy for that. Might be better. But the general answer is that you don't have to. You never have to talk about something that's past. You might want to, because in my experience, when sexual abuse becomes known to the husband, sadly, in my experience, many occasions it has caused difficulty in the relationship. Sometimes the husband has wanted to take vengeance on the person and is driven by anger and hatred and not out of love for the wife, but almost out of anger at what's happened to them, which hasn't actually happened to them, that they've now ended up in a relationship where their wife has been abused and somehow it's deflected on. So they're motivated by, in many ways, ego, but it's damaging for them. Other times, I've known where it's actually also damaged the relationship in a more subtle way. I don't know how to say this without sounding. The husband has, in some ways, it has influenced them in their relationship with their wife. And I'll give an example. Maybe I just should be more explicit. That there was one occasion where a man used to, whenever he touched his wife or approached his wife for intimacy, he would refer to that, and he'd say things like, "Did he do this?" And he almost was psychologically affected by the fact that his wife had been abused. And these two occasions, these two extremes, and several other occasions, the wife did not get the support that she required, but actually the exact opposite. But telling the wife, the husband actually damaged the relationship quite badly. Now, whether it would have made any difference if the husband knew beforehand, I don't know. So it's a risk not telling a husband or wife and allowing it to come out later, especially, and there's other occasions where I've known that a husband actually divorced his wife because he was dishonored by the fact that his wife had not been raped by prior, but had been abused sexually, and he divorced his wife because he considered his wife not to be a virgin, which she was. But in his mind, and so the question would be how. So you don't have to, but it might be appropriate sometimes to think about the consequences of not telling. And in some ways, by telling somebody, look, can I tell you now, this has happened to me in our past, is this going to be an issue for you? It might be sufficient to save that happening. So it's not an easy answer. And also it might come out later. And also it might be that talking to that person will give that support and the healing. But each situation is different. So like I say, this I don't take this as a fatwa, so to speak.
Yeah, I
the sister needs to get help to work this out, and she needs to talk to people she can trust to try and talk it through. And if she wants to talk and wants to get direct, I'm quite happy, and I'm sure Sarah is also very wise and experienced in dealing with things like this, and she just used to be married to an idiot. she can help with this. So if there's any benefit, please do.
Okay, Shaykh, thank you very much for your time today to share with us your knowledge and teach us, guide us with your blessings and wisdom also. Before we end this, you're going to have your iftar in few hours. Can we have the close dua from you?
أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله نسألك الجنة ونعوذ بك من النار. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله نستغفر الله نسألك الجنة ونعوذ بك من النار. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله نستغفر الله نسألك الجنة ونعوذ بك من النار. اللهم إنك عفو تحب العفو فاعف عنا. اللهم إنك عفو تحب العفو فاعف عنا. اللهم إنك عفو كريم تحب العفو فاعف عنا يا كريم. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا أنت التواب الرحيم. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. وربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. يا عظيم يا عظيم اغفر الذنب العظيم فإنه لا يغفر الذنب العظيم إلا العظيم.
آمين.
اللهم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. اللهم افتح لنا بالخير واختم لنا بالخير واجعل عواقب أمورنا بالخير بيدك الخير والعافية إنك على كل شيء قدير. دعواهم فيها سبحانك اللهم وتحيتهم فيها سلام وآخر دعواهم عن الحمد لله رب العالمين.
Thank you very much, Shaykh, for your time and for everything. Allah bless you and your family. We hope to see you next week, inshallah.
Inshallah ta'ala.
And blessed iftar, inshallah. Make dua for us. We remember you in our dua. See you.
Assalamu alaikum.
Salam. Alhamdulillah, everyone. With that, we have ended beautiful and blessed dars with Shaykh Abdul Aziz. Alhamdulillah, we hope all of you have benefited. You can still watch this video again. A couple of announcements I just like to make regarding Shukrillahi collaboration with Free Food for All, right? The porridge and the meal for all the poor people or the unfortunate one in Singapore. We are still raising the fund. We are trying to raise to 60,000. Right now we have around 28,667. So we are at 48%, right? You can contribute at any amount, any amount. You know, whatever amount that you can afford, you can give and to share that blessing with all these people. You get the reward in this dunya and akhirah. The link is bit.ly/porridge meal. I repeat again, bit.ly/porridge meals. And also tomorrow night we have some sisters sharing discussion on women's journey, re-journey their life around this time. Around 9 p.m. or 9:30 p.m. Inshallah. So catch us again at Sweet Facebook. Inshallah. With this, we hope you remember us in your dua. Now tonight is the 11th Ramadan, and inshallah may Allah help us in our struggle. May Allah suffice our need. See you. Good night. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.